We want to grab our seats, please. Start here pretty quickly.
Is Rebecca's fault? I'll make sure that's not there with you. It's always my fault. It's okay. I'll accept it. Show me what I did, but no problem.
Ashley, are we good online?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Of course, this is our October meeting for the San Joaquin River Conservancy. We're gonna go ahead and start off with a roll call. Or excuse me, pledge of allegiance. Stand. Progression of the ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. So we'll try that again. Actually, if you can do this with a roll call, so roll call.
All right, Mr. McCauley,
Here.
Ms. Austin. Here. Mr. Carvasi,
Here.
Mr. Brandau, Mr. Garcia, Ms. McCaskey. Here. Ms. Morris.
I'm present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sandoval. Ms. Vance.
Here.
Mr. Gresham.
Here.
Mr. Benson. Ms. Forehand. Here. Mr. O'Connell.
Here.
Mr. Chavez.
Here.
We have a forum.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to provide an opportunity for my colleagues on the board to identify any potential conflicts of interest they may have on the agenda. Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to item B, public comment of business from the floor. The first 10 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public who wish to address the Conservancy Board on items of interest that are not on the agenda and are within the subject matter of the Conservancy. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. The board is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, so no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the board does not respond to comments at this time. Do we have any public comment?
Excuse me, I get a little nervous talking in front of the big crowd, so bear with me. My name is John Halpin, and I am a volunteer with Parkway. I've been volunteering since 2018. I consider myself a student and a servant of the land. And I was born and raised in Colorado, and I'm of European descent. I just wanted to let you know that I have an extensive background in a mechanical background. I can pretty much fix anything, as long as it doesn't take a contractor's license. I spent probably, it was 38 years as a government employee. And towards the end of my career, I realized that the work that I'd been doing, which I thought was in benefit to the planet, probably did more harm than good. So I'm here to try and reverse that destruction, as it were, to the planet. And so I'm offering my services. I'm a problem solver. If I gather enough information on everything, and I've been working for the Parkway for 6 years now, so I've learned a lot. And once I start getting that information in, then all kinds of ideas just start coming to my head. And I'm ready to throw those ideas out to you. It's like toast, peanut butter toast. You throw enough slices at the wall, eventually something will stick. So, you can
Much
call
better
me.
analogy than the one my dad used to use.
So you can call me anytime. You guys have my contact information. If your car breaks down, you need a ride to work home. I consider myself like a small gear. I've always been like a small gear in a big machine. That's a mechanical analogy, but I'm really more like a worm or an insect, working to break down, organic material into its it's a component so that it can be recycled in nature. I'd like to add one more thing. Shout out to the Conservancy staff and to Mike, because they provided food for the 30 by 30. People don't realize that half of the battle of hydration, and it was a hot freaking day out there, is eating. You have to eat. And so they supplied the food for us, and it really helped out. And the half-baked remnants ended up in my compost pile. So the biodiversity in my yard appreciates it.
So, and we appreciate your advocacy to the river and the Circle B project, so thank you. Did we have any other public comment this morning? All right, hearing none, we're gonna move on to item E, our consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar we approve in one motion unless removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any of my colleagues would like to remove for discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to go out to public comment on the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment for the consent calendar? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Perfect, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, vote, please.
Mr. Polly?
Yes.
Ms. Austin? Yes. Mr. Carmasi?
Yes.
Ms. Lucchesi? Yes. Ms. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Vance?
Yes.
Ms. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. All right, this time we're gonna go ahead and move into our regular set of items. Our first item on the agenda is item F1, an action item. Karen, if you take it away.
So the first item is item F1, and it's to authorize the collection of fees at open conservancy properties. The recommendation from staff is that the board authorize the installation of iron rangers or other fee collection devices and approve a fee schedule for accessing open conservancy properties. So the summary, section 32536 of the San Joaquin River Conservancy Act allows for the collection of fees for the use by the public of any lands owned or controlled by the conservancy. Fee revenue shall be deposited into the San Joaquin River Conservancy Fund and shall be expended by the conservancy to offset the cost of providing the services needed to open and operate properties. The following fee schedule is proposed. Daily fees be set at $9 per vehicle and $5 per trailer. Annual pass fees be set at $185 a year, and that's property specific. The proposed fee schedule is consistent with other parkway access fees and will offset the property maintenance and other staff services specific to the property. And I'd also like to add that the property-specific annual pass would include multiple properties owned and operated by the Conservancy. We have on our agenda later this afternoon, or this morning, I'm sorry, the proposal to open Wildwood Native Park. We are also opening, very close to opening with the Trust Ball Ranch. And then we have a couple other properties and ideas that we have coming forward to the board in this next couple of board meetings. And so we just like to ask for the authority to collect fees. It doesn't have to be implemented right away, but we'd like for the permission to start doing that, and we would be able to enforce those with our regulations that have just been approved in the informational item. That's going to be coming forward in January to the board for approval and adoption.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Get out to members of the board if there are any questions. I would like to point out that we did receive a comment letter from the trust in regards to this item. I hope that the rest of the board had an opportunity to review it. I think it came in early last night, but we do have a copy here for the public as well as everybody on
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Carrie and Rebecca for another issue earlier this week that I brought up to them, and I'll share with the board that I think we need to have our regulations in place before we adopt the authority to collect fees, because there needs to be some enforcement ability associated with this. Also, there's a big load when it comes to cash handling and revenue collection. That's not just a freebie when the state's out collecting money from the public. It needs to be accountable. There needs to be processes in place. There needs to be staff identified to collect it. So I shared with them our cash handling handbook. It's a heavy read. We do more broad-based fee collection than they're proposing at this point. Still, the collection of revenue, and I'm sure Fish and Wildlife has a revenue program as well, needs to be thought out and in place. And so until we can demonstrate an efficiency and a way and who's gonna do what to collect the cash and have regulations in place to where if folks don't pay, there's an enforcement piece, which is our regulations we'll talk about coming into play in February. I think we're a little ahead of the cart's a little ahead of the horse.
Okay. Number 14.
I have some, serious concerns about the timing of this point as well. I think the sequencing with regard to the regulations, but also in terms of, moving forward with collection of fees. I mean, we're at the early stage of opening additional properties here. I think that we're wanting to, establish, the public being able to access the properties. And though I understand the need or the request for the authorization of the fees, I'm not of the mindset, and that's just my personal opinion at this point, that we do this at this time. I think it's something that could be reviewed at a later date and not necessarily just in January, but I do think that we need to have processes in place. But I also think from a public relations perspective, I think that we need to get our ducks in order, so to speak, to use such a saying, and ensure that we've got everything moving in the right direction and operational. And I just feel that it's just too premature at this point to move forward. But that's my personal opinion.
I just wanted to ask, Carrie, can you give us some feedback? Maybe, because you know about this a lot more than I do, maybe there are things that we're not considering, unintended consequences, because you've come requesting this authorization. In your mind, things are happening in a certain order. I didn't want to worry 6 months down the line. Why didn't we do this? Well, I told you we should have done it, and we didn't do it, and this is why we're behind. What are you envisioning, and what is, based on feedback from the 2 board members, what are your thoughts?
So the San Joaquin River Conservancy Fund is not healthy at this time. It doesn't offset our costs for staff to go out and operate and maintain properties. And to provide some additional help to that account, it's recommended that we adopt a fee schedule for those properties so that we can provide those adequate services. This conservancy has recently had conversations with the NRA and the Department of Finance to discuss just having their support in funding those positions. They said that they were willing to consider our request, but that we needed to do a good faith effort to show that we are contributing to the help and the funding in the San Joaquin River Conservancy account. So this is one of the avenues, collecting fees that we're authorized to do under our act. And that's something that we have talked. We do already generate fees that go into that account. We have grazing, leases, we have rentals, leases, we received a donation. And there's other types of revenue that comes back in there. And we also offset costs of operation and maintenance at Sycamore Island. The trust has staff that collects fees, but the fees that are generated from the parking and trailer and, use of that property don't cover the cost of the staff, but it does offset their costs. So we are trying, and this is just one of the things that we can also do to do our good faith effort with the Department of Finance, show that we're generating income.
That context helps a lot, so it's to be very clear, the San Joaquin River Conservancy Fund, that account pays for what?
That account pays for a lot of things. We have interagency contracts and staff.
Which is big.
Which is big.
So if you don't have enough money in that account, where do we rock here to be, Paul?
Yeah.
Because we're
that's a
asking
good
for
question.
support from Sacramento, and they're saying, we can support you, but we need you to also start the process of being, I'll say, it's difficult to be self-sufficient when we have a lot of need, a lot of demands. But I just want to be clear, this was kind of a request for Sacramento thing.
And it's one of the things that we can do to improve the health of that account.
Understood. Doesn't mean we're gonna all of a sudden start collecting a bunch of fees, but we're starting the process for that.
Right.
Oh, great.
I think the collection of fees to offset O&M is inevitable. And I'll support that when the time is right. In my opinion, the time is just not right because we don't have a cash collection plan. There's been nothing demonstrated that we know what we're doing and how we're gonna do this, with who's gonna be doing it. I wanna see that, and then I wanna have the regulations in place, and then it'll have my full support. Absolutely, this is a future state of where we're gonna need to be. thrown in, but I don't think we're ready here.
And before we do all the additional questions, I can ask, when would you expect to have those regulations and processes in place?
So the regulations, were in the information item. We're hoping to have that process complete by the January board meeting and available for adoption at that time.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, and that's what January would then be the implementation of these fees.
We don't have to implement the fees in January. That's just when the regulations would be adopted by the board. But we were asking for the just permission to start collecting fees, and then we can implement it at a later date. So it doesn't have to be January.
Thank you. Something that really concerns me is that looking at these prices, I already access the properties obviously here, it's a distance from the city where they're at. What concerns me too, and I appreciate the other board members for pointing out some of the, like admin stuff. But what concerns me is that even when looking at these prices too, is considering the community that we work with, I would even be able to afford accessing these properties with the prices right now. And that's just an honest opinion, right? And I know that I'm in a better position than most people in our community. So that's something that I hope that I know that it is inevitable to charge and have fees at a later time. But I do feel that for public relation purposes, I don't think we're at that point yet. Our properties aren't, unfortunately, they're not at the point where we should be charging our communities to access, because some of them aren't even aware that these properties are open, right, to begin with. And so that's a big concern for me. I know that it should be a sustainable, it should be coming to this, to our, the fees should be charged at a later point, and it's inevitable, like, or the board members mentioned, but that is what I'm thinking about it. It's concerned.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Do you have any other comments from the board or questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to go off to public comment.
Richard Sloan, Fresno Canoe and Kayak Club. We're aware that at some point in time, the Conservancy would be asking about fees. And we've talked to all of our members, our active members, about the Conservancy charging access to the various properties and especially access to the river. And it was unanimous, we are all in favor of a fee to help support the Conservancy to hold in their properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Good morning, Sharon Weaver with the San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust. And as you know, I shared some of my concerns about the timing of this fee authorization and the letter that I submitted. But I wanted to just share with you an experience that I had last week when I was able to attend the Land Trust Rally in Providence, Rhode Island. Growing up in a place in California where I'm used to paying fees for everything, I'm used to paying fees to go to Woodward Park, to go to the state parks, to go to the national parks, you know, that's just kind of the environment that I grew up in. But it's been really interesting to me as I've taken different trips across the country and visited parks and open spaces in all different states of our nation. There are an amazing amount of places where you don't have to pay a fee to go into a park, be it a state park, a state park. So I've realized as I've traveled around that, you know, maybe fees are a California thing. This last week when we were in Providence, on the last day of my trip there, we went over to Rocky Point State Park, which is this beautiful place on Narragansett Bay. We were able to just Uber in, get dropped off, no fee anywhere. Nobody checking that, you know, we had a special pass or anything like that, and enjoyed a beautiful walk along the bay. So I just thought, you know, it's such an interesting idea that, you know, maybe there's other ways that we could generate revenue so that we don't have to create fees that act as a barrier towards some of our community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
We have a board member hand raised online.
Why don't we finish our public comment and we'll go back to the board members. Any other members of the public wish to provide comment?
Sheila, I came for urban diversity design. I worked with
youth groups around the San River Parkway. I just have a question. Is the fee going to be also, is there going to be a kind of exception for if there is a educational purpose or there is a volunteer group going for cleanups? Is there a mechanism to make sure that they don't also pay the fee? Because in some of our work with the youth, we have to go to Sycamore Island or to Lost Lake because those are the only open properties. And it's always an issue for the young kids that are driving. They don't have much money. They have to make the effort for a few hours to go do a volunteer job, and then yet they have to pay the fee at the gate. Usually I pay every car's fee if they come in out of my pocket because there's no way to ask them to go do the cleanup and then pay the fee. So is there any system if the fee goes in place that make them not to pay?
So we've discussed at staff level, having some equitable, ways for youth and educational programs or nonprofits volunteers to access properties without having to pay the fee. Like field trips to just request, permission to come to the property, they wouldn't have to pay the fee. State Parks has a pass that you can check out from the library and you can access state parks. So we've discussed over having the park they're seasonal, accept fees seasonally, and then on the off season, they don't accept or doesn't take fees. So we have discussed ways that we can be more equitable with regard to the fees and then our groups that, should be coming out there.
Would this be something that can be workshop with the facilitators? Because it's very often going through all these permissions and communication system right now is a kind of a barrier to, feel like, we can go and do the job. And then we have to go through the paperwork and permission and approval. So would this be something that can be done easily maybe once you want to implement the system so you can go together to see how it can be actually streamlined? So it's not another permission, system that we have to do.
We're happy to talk about that with you at another time. I think that there's, the permissions you might be referring to are because the properties are closed. With owner properties, I'm hoping that would be a more streamlined process, but we can definitely workshop it and talk more about it.
Maybe at pace.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wait, can I ask you a question before you go? Can you say what properties it is again that you pay at for access?
Chicken Island, you have to pay, Lost Lake, you have to pay, but I understand Ball Ranch, when it opens, there is no payment on that one. And then the winery, the trust was very gracious, they would let us go. And I don't know if there is a payment for the people, but we did service work there and we didn't have to pay. So paying the fee to get in is always a little bit of a issue.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other public comment at this time? In person or online?
There's no public online,
Okay.
just,
Hearing none, we're gonna go back to the board, go to our member online.
Mayor Garcia.
Member Garcia, can you hear us? While we're waiting for him, are there any other comments or questions from the board on this subject?
I was just gonna say, I agree with Member Gresham's thoughts. I do think the collection is probably inevitable, but I do think we need to have the regulations in place and cash handling. I thought of the same thing because the whole spam control issue is an issue for us, which is one of the reasons we actually stopped taking cash at our license counter, which was a big decision. But the other thing is some of the issues raised by Sheila, it would be good to have that outlined in a policy in terms of, options for, low income folks to be able to access, having it lined out how volunteers would access, all of that, just sort of being specified, I think would be good for us all to review.
Member Rossi?
I think this is very healthy. I want to thank the staff and carry this forward because of open meeting laws. This is how we do this. We get to meet as a group and we all have different opinions and experiences, and we try to make the best policy possible. I was talking to our chair, and one thing we'd like to do, let's go ahead and my suggestion is maybe postpone this till January. In my, member Gresham's comments and member Forehand's. And then we can also do is, the cities and counties, our municipal partners on the conservancy, maybe we can get together and talk about how we can contribute to maybe backfilling this amount. That can, I think, go a long way to help support it. If we really care about this conservancy, then the four of us can all step up, cities of Fresno and Madera, and the counties of Fresno and Madera as well. So we'll try and have that conversation, see what we can do. At least the two of us are working on that. So I'll make a motion to table this item to a later date.
Is there another board comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. We can, even if I make a motion, you can take comment. So I'll make a motion to table this item to a later date as determined by staff.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second. But you can pick whoever.
Before we do our roll call vote, was Member Garcia able to unmute or?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yes, someone shake their head saying, yeah, we can hear me, or say acknowledge. All right,
Yes.
good. Well, good morning. I'm navigating this new system. Every time I log into a Zoom, it's a different one. But apologies. Been listening to the conversation, just short and sweet. I am not for the collection of fees at the open conservancy properties. And I would accept the motion to table this for a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. All right, unless there are any other comments from the board, we will go to a roll call vote, please.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Ms. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
Ms. Lucchesi?
Yeah.
Ms. Norris?
Yes.
Ms. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Forehand?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Travis?
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item F2, which is an action item. Here.
So this item is to authorize the executive officer to open Wildwood Native Park. It is recommended that the board authorize the executive officer to open Wildwood Native Park when all of the conditions for opening have been met. So the summary is that the board has previously approved and adopted a policy for opening and closing properties. That was in December of 2023, and it's included in your packet as attachment F2. At the February 2024 board meeting, the Conservancy Governing Board authorized the executive officer to enter into 2 service contracts in order to meet the minimum conditions for opening Wildwood Native Park. The Conservancy entered into these contracts with American Global Security for daily park closing and security services on September 17, 2024, and anticipates entering into the contract with GNS Complete Janitorial Services for daily janitorial and maintenance services in late September, early October. We still haven't signed that contract, so it's early October that we're hoping, this week, hopefully. Additionally, Conservancy staff are prioritizing the completion of the following projects at Wildwood Native Park to meet the minimum conditions for opening. It's anticipated that these projects will be completed in October. We have a couple of volunteer dates coming up, and we're dedicated to opening this property. So the items that need to be completed are signage, delineating the property boundaries or limiting vehicle access to other properties, trail and tree maintenance, improving accessibility to the bathroom, painting the bathroom, installing trash cans, and working to cross that last one off, the installation of the Iron Ranger. And so then, once all the minimum conditions for opening have been met, the executive officer will open the park to the public and issue a news release. And we will also cross off that last item about fees that will be tabled.
So, if you could, before we go to member questions and comments, if you could please send out the volunteer dates to the board. It'd be most appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please include John too. I hear he's good at
Yeah. We will send those to you, and we also do have them posted on the Conservancy's webpage under our partners tab.
Fantastic. So with that, do we have any questions, comments from the board?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Member Cross?
No, like, Member Chavez said, this is a great moment. Thank you so much for your work. You know, in the past, all these promises are made. We're gonna open up all these properties regardless of facts. And I mean, look, you put on here, minimum conditions. We really shouldn't open up places unless there are trash cans there because we don't want people littering everywhere. That happens. We don't want, opening properties without trail and tree maintenance. Those are important things and they're minimum standards. So thank you for holding us to those standards. I think if happy, and this is how you do it. It's a good job.
I just have to thank staff. They've been really excellent throughout this whole process, and they're really the ones that we should be thanking.
Thank you.
And the volunteers. Sorry, you guys are great.
Thank you. And just for clarification, are we gonna do, like ribbon cutting or anything like that, or are we just doing a press release or what?
We do ribbon cutting.
I mean, I always like the settlers. So, if we could do that, that would be, it'd be a great thing. So, do we have any other comments, questions?
No, I think that will, again, going back to my comment earlier, more people need to know that these properties are open so they can access it. Once we have access and once people know that these properties are, they'll fall in love with the properties and then they'll hopefully invest in some of those fees that we are here to. So people need to know.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Do we have any comments online from our members?
No,
That's what we're gonna kick out the public. Any public comment? Seeing and hearing none. Okay, we got one.
And Chuck Crowder with River Tree Volunteers. We are one of the partners that are working on Safe Work Day or Work Weekend at Wildfire. That later this month, 2 days, a Saturday and a Sunday. So we're also working with the USPG Energy people, different scout troops, River Tree Volunteers. I believe River Life Club is coming out. It's posted on the River Tree Facebook page. I believe the Conservancy has it already posted on your website. The word's going out, and I anticipate having a very large group out there because we're going to paint the restrooms, we're going to paint the trim trees, we're going to take and clear the trails, we're going to do a lot of different things. And I hope all of you guys can come out one of the 2 days and see how many people, see how much they enjoy working on it and what all we're doing. Okay?
Excellent. I'm already there. All right, with that, we're gonna bring it back to, the board for action.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, first and a second, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Ms. Austin,
Yes.
Ms. Lucchese,
Yes.
Mr. Carmasi.
Yes.
Stephanie Crossman. Ms. Norris,
Yes.
Ms. Vance,
Yes.
Mr. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
they may have it.
Thank you. I do want to recognize Ms. Sandoval, who's joined us. Thank you for making a safe drive down 99. Absolutely. So with that, we're going to move on to item F3.
Okay, so this item is the San Joaquin River Western Region Access Activation Plan presentation and proposal for additional funding for the completion of the CEQA process. The recommendation from staff is to receive the proposal or the presentation and proposal for additional funding needed to complete the CEQA process and adopt the initial study mitigated negative declaration. Discuss the presentation and proposal and provide the direction to the executive officer on how to proceed. And so there is a quite lengthy summary. I think I might just give you guys a second to review that and we can bring that presentation up. But I will highlight at the end the additional work that needs to be, or the Provost and Pritchard is requesting an additional $9,526 to complete the CEQA process that results in the adoption of the ISND. The work that needs to be completed includes submitting the September 2024 administrative draft initial study mitigated negative deck to the executive officer of the Conservancy for review, updating CEQA notices, preparing the draft ISND by updating the admin draft with client comments, publish the NOI in Fresno and Madera County newspapers, publishing the draft ISND at the clearinghouse, preparing a board folder with a stamped NOI, MMLP, and detailed project description, preparing the response to comments, a document for the board items, preparing the final ISM&D, filing the NOD at the Fresno and Madera counties, and then uploading to the state clearinghouse website.
Right, then we're gonna have a presentation from Pete. Excellent.
Right, board and governing chair members, the pleasure to be here again to talk about Western Region's Access and Activation Plan. Most of you have heard several presentations on it. There are a few new board members. Good to see you. I haven't met you in person yet, but we will give a brief background. There's much lengthier introduction to and overview of the project provided in your packet, as Carrie mentioned. So the Western Region's Access Plan, next slide. It is the downstream element of the 2018 San Joaquin River Parkway Master Plan update. It is the southwestern portion, about 3.5 miles, that comes upstream from Highway 99 and the high-speed rail bridge up to the Millburn Overlook, which is a city park there. Next. The parkway starts at the upstream end, which started at the Millburn Overlook. It goes down to the Liddell property, currently used as the Blood Point Golf Course. The primary parkway meanders through the Liddell property and the ponds there, and then it would cross over due to topographical constraints over to the Madera side, and then come back over, traversing down along the river, passing the River Bottom Park, which is City of Fresno River Bottom Park, underneath the Amtrak rails, down along Riverside Golf Course, at which time it would then split again due to topographical constraints along the Madera side, and then coming along on this Fresno side, past the developments North Riverside. I apologize for the mislabeling. The western North Riverside Drive should be North Teal. As you're coming down past that would provide access to the Ramtap Horse Park, and then ultimately to Campus Shan. Next slide. Campus Shan is where a lot of this Western Reaches Access and Activation Plan is focused. There was a balance of both restoration and recreation. And to this site that was formerly a Boy Scout camp, and prior to that was the location of the Herndon Bridge prior to the State Route 41 being constructed across the San Joaquin River. We'll go into a little bit more detail on the areas, but the overview of Campus Shan has a beach, which is right next to a large pond, which is a very gentle area of the river. And then out in the middle of the river, river proper channel, is the River Lab, which would be a location that's ideal for educational opportunities and getting the public engaged and bringing students out there to learn about the river and being intimately connected with it, as well as different recreational and then restoration amenities and improvements to the site. Next slide.
Sorry.
There we go. Yeah. So as the old Fresno Beach used to be, the thought of Camp Shan and the activation and the access and the improvements that are planned for that location, there's visibility from both State Route 99 and the future high-speed rail. And then it's also an easy access off of Weber Avenue from Herndon Avenue for residents of Fresno coming up north into the area. Next slide. From North Weber Avenue, there would be an improved entry. Currently, as you pass the Horse Park and then the law enforcement's shooting range on Weber Avenue, which is a nicely repaved street, thank you to the city of Fresno, and you get to the old Campus Shan sign. The improvements there would have more gateway signage, a bus drop off for city buses, potential, and then heading out towards the connection to the multi-use trail, up towards the river overlook and the River Lab and Campus Shan proper. Next slide. And it really brings back to what Fresno, the old Fresno Beach used to be before the days where every house had air conditioning units, and some people today still don't have access, the ability to afford to run AC. It's October, it's still 104, right? These times are changing, it's hotter. The river is a great amenity to be able to allow people for a place to cool off and enjoy what is otherwise kind of sometimes dangerous and burdensome heat and oppressive heat that we have in the valley. This plan for the Campus Shan and the Western Reaches, this overall provides that access to the river for people to be able to come and cool off. This is the western, or the, excuse me, the eastern side of Camp Shan, where there'd be a boat, potential boathouse and dining, diversity of access, with piers for fishing, boating, with kayaking, and just enjoying the river and the cool air coming off the water. Next slide. The plan in Camp Shan really balances the restoration and recreation. A lot of that was developed as a result of the work that was done in preparation for the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration document, the biological and cultural studies that were conducted, as well as air quality and greenhouse gas emissions studies that were conducted as part of that. The biological studies really informed where to do the improvements and where to do the restoration on the Camp Shan site. You can see the visibility from the high-speed rail bridge is showing a rendering or the river lab. Again, your documents have a lot more renderings of the buildings that were proposed and go into depth more on each of these locations. So I encourage you to read those documents or that document when you get a chance. Next slide. So the conceptual plan is large in overall magnitude, right? And so what we've looked at, the design team with, again, this was all funded with a grant from Wildlife Conservation Board with Fresno Building Healthy Communities and a team that included myself, I'm sorry, but introduce myself, Mike Osborne, Brooks Pritchard, as well as our team underneath WRT, Landscape Architects was the leading designer, and then we had architects and biologists and cultural professionals on the team too. The overall conceptual plan was broken out into 5 phases, A through E. The first phase, as we saw it, would be the parkway connecting Milburn Overlook to Camp Shan. Then there's phases B through E, which are elements of development of Camp Shan. Now, again, those are concepts. Those aren't how it has to be laid out. It was just a thought of how it can be laid out and how it can be implemented. Any part of the current plan can be implemented. Next slide. The dollar figure for the overall implementation is high. What we're asking for right now is just $9,500 to complete the CEQA process, which would be, as Carrie mentioned, the public circulation of the document for public comments, addressing public comments, and then the finalization of the mitigated negative declaration by the state clearinghouse and the adoption by the board. Any of these elements could be taken down in smaller chunks and scaled. You don't have to, CEQA does not consider the total dollar amount. It just considers the environmental impacts of the overall project. So for implementation, once we've adopted the CEQA document, that allows us to go after funding and grant opportunities to do the implementation of any of these phases or a portion of any of these phases. It would allow us to just do basic minimal openings as we're doing Wildwood Park to Camp Shan just to get it open and accessible. And then it would all, given the CEQA document being adopted, that makes all those biological studies, the cultural studies, everything that's been done to date, finalizes it, seals it, and that makes this a much stronger application for future grant funding without doing the CEQA adoption and letting it sit on a shelf. Eventually those biological studies, cultural studies, and air quality, those things get stale. And after a certain point in time, we'd have to redo all that work in order to get to the same spot we are today. Once adopted, that CEQA document holds, and this project can be implemented in whatever fashion the staff and the board feel is appropriate and based on available funding that could be awarded. And that summarizes my presentation. Questions?
I think we're going to have a couple questions here, so bear with us while we kind of digest a little bit. First off, thank you for the presentation. Go ahead and we'll start with the members of the board. Do we have any questions or comments in regards to this?
Definitely have comments, but I don't know if anyone has questions, maybe do that first so he doesn't have to start.
Sure. Any questions for me?
I have one question and for the public knowledge. You said the CEQA document holds, how long does it hold?
Once adopted, there is no expiration.
Until conditions change where there's new significant impacts, like we not previously disclosed.
Right.
Correct. If the scope of the project changes in a change being of change that would be more of an impact as mentioned. It would be anything that's equal to or less than what's already been studied. Doesn't change the secret document. A change that would alter the scope could also be done as an amendment, which is a relatively simple process. It's more just for record keeping purposes of why this was done versus what was originally planned in the document. If something changed, but an airport that changes the scope of the project to a level that would have to reopen CEQA and do more. But underneath what was studied, which is quite extensive, and I think that a robust plan and very well thought out and done for the entire parkway. Anything within that scope that's been studied can be implemented in whatever manner equal to or less than.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you restate, what you need from us and what is today? And what does that first of all open up within the CEQA process? What's gonna happen after that?
Certainly. So to be clear, what we're asking today is for Pros and Richard, who prepared this secret document with President BHC and WRT underneath the Grant and Wildlife Conservation Board, to basically work with staff, contract directly with the San Joaquin River Conservancy to bring the administrative draft document, release it for public comment. There's a 30-day public comment period. Once that closes, addressing public comments, finalizing that ISND, and then I'm bringing it back to the board for adoption and submittal to the state clearinghouse. And that would once adopted and submitted to state clearinghouse, that document is then memorialized and held and would be used in perpetuity for further grant funding opportunities to implement any part of this project.
We'll follow up question. You know, in my mind, the CEQA is a very democratic law. To this point, have these plans this is regarding public transparency to a certain extent. These haven't been seen in the public and looking for public comment. This would be the time for public comment.
No, we'd be looking for public comment strictly on the negative declaration in the CEQA document. The plan, we engaged, there was extensive public outreach that was done in preparation of the Western overall plan that has been presented and is in the larger document that you guys have. The public was engaged several times, somewhat dozen-ish, over the course of the design to develop the design. What did people want to see at Camp Shan? How does the trail look? That public's been engaged. The document that you guys have before you is also publicly available. So that's been available since December, I believe. So the design is out has been out for public review. The public was engaged to develop the design that's currently presented. What's going to be released now is strictly the CEQA document, which from that the biggest the meat and the core of what is needed there is the mitigation and monitoring plan that's within it to what needs to be done to implement the project so it has no substantial negative environmental impacts.
I have a question before I turn on this. What was the involvement of previous Conservancy staff or board members with this project to date?
Both staff and the board staff was engaged extensively throughout the same time period, 2 to 3 years that the public was also being engaged. And we brought this project to the board several times. At least twice that I'm aware of, over the course of.
But as far as reviewing the actual draft document, I think myself and Carl Jansen were the only ones that have seen it. Is that true? Has anyone else reviewed it?
There could be, it was brought up in August, I believe it was first made available. There was the administrative draft, which is the internal document to be reviewed by the board and staff. That was released to the board and staff, I believe in August of 23, about just over a year ago. And then in October of 23, the board at the time decided to agree to accept the document in its current state to allow the closure of the Wildlife Conservation Board grants, but did not wanted to be publicly released at that point in time. So board members at that time ostensibly had time to review the document as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
I do have one question. Given all the extreme, climate impacts that we've had, has that been taken into consideration in this plan?
It has been, that's one of the nuances that Camp Shan and the San Joaquin River, quite honestly, that prior to a dam, the river was unregulated and unpredictable from nature. Now, with the release of the frine, water does change, still changes function quite a bit, right? There's the lower flows that are done just for wildlife and fish purposes, and there's the higher flows that come when it's time to deliver for agricultural uses or for flood protection purposes when they need to release for snow melts that are pending from the Sierras. So there's a lot of fluctuation in the river. We've taken that into consideration in the design of particularly Camp Shan, but that also led to how the network, the Parkway network, traverses the site and what is feasible to be done within the river or across the river and how to keep people and the infrastructure and investment safe.
And like, for example, the float launch ramps, are they built in a way where they can fluctuate and not be, not accessible to the public when there's high water levels?
So right now, yes and no, I guess they haven't been fully designed. It hasn't been fully constructed, but that is the concept, is that we, if you go back a couple slides, go back to this, one more, sorry, that one there. So, right above where it says the beach and there's a raised boardwalk. That raised boardwalk is there because there is potential for when they're in higher flows, you can see it kind of, going from the cursor up in this way. That is planned for water to reach that area and become a little slow flow channel because it does happen today and we're not changing the ecology of that area. That section of Camp Shan is more of the restoration area. And so with less activation, where more of the recreation and improvements are built on places that are higher ground and more protected from the fluctuations of the river. That answers your question.
Oh, I apologize. Cassie?
No, thank you. I just wanted to confirm, do we have funding for actual project implementation? At this time, we not.
And that's the key step for a CEQA, because once CEQA is done, granting agencies would deem a project, for lack of a better word, liability for grantees or granting agencies. If a CEQA is not done, that could take months, years, right, the whole process. Where now we're like this close to being done, and once it's adopted, then that application for future funding is a much stronger application and allows the staff and the board to pursue additional funding.
And then, you had, in your presentation, you had talked about one of the reasons to also complete the sequel process is because some of the biological studies, baseline studies, that data might change, or get stale.
Yeah.
What, in your mind, what's the difference between those baseline studies being stale and the CEQA document being stale?
The CEQA document would, once adopted, the CEQA document doesn't go stale.
I wanted to just maybe focus in on what board member Vance is talking about, changed circumstances, and wouldn't that also apply to the biological studies as well?
It would if there was a substantial change in scope. So the biological studies and the cultural studies, there's an overall area that's referred to as an area of potential effect, right? So that overall area, which is the maximum area that could be disturbed or modified at all during the project, whether it's temporary for construction activities or permanent with improvements. That area changes, then yeah, the studies would have to be either amended or redone for that additional area that were not within the original scope of the project. Now, depending on what's planned there, that would determine what level of additional study or what level of amendment or modification to the secret document would be necessary.
What is the available funding for this just under $10,000?
Are you asking if we have $10,000?
Yes, I'm asking.
Yeah. We have 10,000. We can,
From where? Which fund?
The SJRC fund.
Which is what pays for staff and
Which is
isn't
what pays
enough
for
to cover
everything.
staff.
Thank you. So Camp Cheyenne, I consider of all the properties in the Fresno side, is I think one of the low hanging fruits. It's one that we can open up. Now, I want to make very clear, I've been able to go out there and have a lot of visits with the folks at BHC and the Western Reaches team. And they have done a really, really good job of getting feedback from all different segments of the community. This is not just about Northwest Fresno. This is about people as far away as in Southeast Fresno or Calawa being able to come and access the river. And I think they put together a very attractive plan. When if you can go back to some of those renderings we had, even going back to the last one, yeah, that to me is very exciting. And I grew up just miles away from this. Making this happen would be something that just, it makes me very excited. And I'm sitting here and I've seen these renderings and I was looking at them again. And then when I see the dollar amount, my heart sinks because now I'm on the inside. I know how things work. If I could go back to June of 2021, I would say, let's do this good work. But no, you have to be very pragmatic with the public. We're not going to get $111 million. It is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I love dreaming big, but I think government for too long has been able to fill people's heads with, we can do all this stuff. But then when it comes to doing it, well, that's the next politician's problem because they're going to be there. And this is not about Camp Shane. This is about Circle B and all the other projects. In the past, I hate to go back to that, but it was, we can do all these things and we'll figure out how to deal with it later. And now we're at an inflection point where people are saying, hey, I remember participating in that focus group. I want to be able to ride my kayak and my canoe through Camp Shane. Well, what happened? What happened to the docks and the facilities you're going to build there? And now we have to say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have the money. That's what concerns me a lot. So this is more of an observation. I think we've come a long way. We've made a lot of changes as the board. We have a new executive officer, which is great. We're not doing that anymore. But I just feel so darn bad because good, honest work was done. This is who would not go to this? This is very, very cool. And I love the idea of Fresno Beach. That's so cool. But I see some of the folks from Sacramento. I'm like, hey, can we get $111 million? It's tough. I'm not saying it's not possible. And you said maybe we can scale it down to something else that works better. But even $8 million is a lot of money. We're trying to struggle to get River West fully funded, and we've had to scale back that project because we don't have enough money. So it's hard. It's really hard being in this position.
It is hard, and to Ms. Vance's point, this plan is robust. That is a high dollar. I don't know, that is what it is. But the high dollar number to implement this entire plan is not what we need to do today. What we need to do today is just get the CEQA document adopted so we can get a grant for $1 million, do a little cleanup and open up Camp Peak. So we don't have to do all of any of the phases. We can just be a portion of anything to get this activated. It's such an asset.
And that's what I want to do. Can we go back to the slide where you break down the different phases, A through E, that has the different. Yeah. We're almost there. And here, go ahead.
Sorry, before we move on, I just want to let you know that there is another board member.
Oh, I look at this and even I thought, oh, we could do the trail part, and that's the most. I didn't think it was that much. I actually am on the same boat that you're on. I don't want to take this work away. I want to finally move forward. I am worried about depleting the fund because we decided not to collect fees, and that's going to make it even worse. So maybe the city of Fresno has to kick in here, and I'm going to talk to the mayor about that. But I want to be very pragmatic. It is going to be really hard to make this happen at that dollar amount, and it's going to get more expensive over time. So I think, like I said, going back, I think we need to be super transparent with the folks when we talk about these plans and say, hey, we also need to scale back, understanding California's in a really tough financial position right now. So,
and that once the CEQA was adopted though, California's position is not great today. Who knows what will be in a year, 5 years from now. That would allow potentially some of this to be done. There's also what we need, should happen, is a consideration from an economic and enhancement standpoint. If you have this amenity, it's close to the river. As a parent of 3, driving up and down 99, there's nothing convenient to pull off between like Modesto and Bakersfield. Like there's void of any decent thing, something to do around 99 if you're traveling up and down in California. Just gonna be something that attracts people that pull off in Fresno, hang out here for a little bit, and then continue on. So there are considerations that it's not just we're just gonna build it and it's just money wasted.
No, I don't want to say wasted, but last question, is it possible that given it would take so long to get money, that we may have to conduct a new CEQA analysis all over again, because one of those changes can happen?
No, well, again, once it's adopted, the only reason we have to redo the secret document is if we scaled any of the buildings or the size or the overall footprint of the project to a level that it became significantly different than what was in studying the secret. So we put a hotel there, that would change.
Sure.
I think we have a member of Vance, and we have a member online, and then a member of home. Well, you guys share.
This isn't a question for you, so are we done with questions? Because I don't want to have to stand there while I do.
I don't know that we're done with questions, because we've got a member online, we've got a member of home.
Okay, sorry, this is gonna be long, so. Sorry, Mike, I have different perspectives
It's all good.
than what you just offered.
That's okay.
I won't support this item, but I need to explain why it's gonna be a little bit long. I know there was a lot of community support and input into the scope of this, and so, and I appreciate that. But I think it was done without the appropriate sideboards. And when I say sideboards, I mean specifically the Parkway Master Plan. And I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. There are several elements that are exciting, like the trail, the river lab, the signage, the parking, I mean, there are parts of it maybe all in the A that I think are really consistent with the master plan. But when you start getting into those other elements, I think it's pretty out of bounds, and I'm gonna explain a little bit. I did review the document in late 2023, and I think the reason I was able to do that is because, a significant part of the property is currently owned by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're in the process of changing that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the master parkway plan, which was updated in 2018, it has guidelines, design criteria, and generally speaking, it focuses on conservation, restoration, and low impact recreation. And I don't think this, especially when you get into the BDCE elements, is low impact. I'm not gonna go through all of the items, but this does cover up to 4 bridges. I want you guys to think about that for a minute in terms of cost and impact. It talked about modifying the river itself for the swimming area. And, we're in the middle of restoring a spring run, salmon run in this area. And this is this is adjacent or part of one of the most important spawning areas for spring run. The terracing for, there's parts in the document that talk about terracing the bank for sort of like a basking beach, which involves a lot of fill and retaining walls. There's a dock, of course, which you saw. There's a beach pavilion, with dining. There's an adventure zone with a ropes course, volleyball courts, etc. Which all sounds great. I mean, this sounds like a really neat place to visit. I mean, I would want to go there. I'd want to take my kids there. But when you think about the impacts to the river, which does flood, we do have high flow events. And when we're in the process of restoring a really important part of the river for salmon. And remember, this is one of the most impacted rivers in California. We're trying to turn things around, not engage in more additional impacts. And so I'm really concerned about several of these elements. Another thing that I know from reviewing the document is that we've not engaged the tribes at all. I know we met the minimum criteria for sending out the letters. We didn't get responses, but when you have this much ground disturbance or construction on a river bed, there's inevitably significant tribal resources, and they should be part of the conversation, and they haven't been. This is an M&D, so mitigated negative declaration means that you have to mitigate all the impacts to less than significant levels. I'm not convinced that we did that here in this document. It also doesn't incorporate all of the biological resource information or biological mitigation measures that are in the master plan. The San Joaquin River Conservancy is the lead CEQA agency here. So if there's an issue with the CEQA document, we are the ones that are vulnerable, the state. And we get to wear that, and the taxpayers get to wear any associated costs. So I think we need to be pretty responsible on that. We don't have a CEQA policy yet on the board. So one thing that's made me a little crazy every time a CEQA document comes up, ever since the master plan, we'll sometimes have community groups to develop a plan. There's not a lot of oversight. The board's not involved in the project description, which is, the basis for all the impacts. And then we're asked to put something out for public review when the whole board hasn't had input on the project description, and maybe they're seeing it for the first time when it's out for public review. That is not how we should do things. So we need, I know Carrie has that as one of her many to-do items, but we have to have a CEQA policy, and this is why, because this sort of setup where you're all hearing about these things in a presentation, and you haven't actually read the document, and you might be looking at it for the first time when it's going out for public review, is not right. And then lastly, this document is not necessary for Camp Shane to open. There's two things necessary for Camp Shane to open. We need a little bit of money to meet the minimum opening criteria. The impacts from that are minimal, and I think it could be done with a CADX. You don't need CEQA. And then the property needs to transfer from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. All of this cannot happen on something designated as an ecological reserve. That was documented in the last draft. The good news is that I can report is that I have something ready for my signature, which I will sign later today. It's the final stages of what's necessary to go to the Wildlife Conservation Board to finally transfer Camp Shane to the Conservancy. So that's an important step to get Camp Shane open, and we can do that without this document. So thank you. I know that was a lot.
Ms. Manson, if I may, in regards to the tribes, the Native American tribes were involved quite a bit during the public engagement portion of the design, leading up to the design and the preparation of MND. And unfortunately, due to scheduling and then during the transition period with executive officers, that meetings with them in person specifically for the CEQA document were not able to be held, but they have been involved in the project.
That's good to hear. And one other thing that I forgot to mention is that both our interim executive officer, Karen Brewer, as well as our former executive officer, Melinda Marks, both also brought up issues with concerns with inconsistency with the Parkway Master Plan. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you, Member Vance. We're gonna go online.
Hi, everyone. I think Julie made a lot of the comments I was going to ask questions about. I sort of fundamentally question whether this is a mitigated negative declaration. It just doesn't strike me as a project at this scope could pass that test. And so I would prefer to read this document before it goes out in a public forum, because I don't think $9,000 would be adequate if we need to fix this document in a major way. And I'm also interested to know more about the tribal conversations, because this looks like a lot of earth work. And I would expect there needs to be significant archaeological analysis. And I'm just curious what's in the document. Again, I think the fundamental problem is I haven't seen this document, and the concerns that Julie raised, I think we need to be addressed before we would release it to the public.
Thank you, Member Norris. And roll call.
First of all, I really appreciate the outreach that had been done in the past. In particular, reaching out to Fresno BHC and other community groups. These are well-serving constituencies in the south of Fresno who very rarely have access here. I think this plan expresses a lot of the desires and hopes of the entire city, but particularly those in the south where I also live. So it's deeply meaningful to me, these plans and what they express. I'm wondering if I have not seen the CEQA document myself. I'm very interested in seeing that CEQA document. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions from the board? Regret?
Yeah, to Julie's points, not having seen this document and hearing people who have seen this document's concerns that there are inconsistencies with the master plan, I'm not comfortable with this approach at this point.
And I know, Member Carvasi, there's one thing you want to say, but before I pass it over to you, I wanted to make a suggestion to this board. Hearing really two things. One, that we really want to move forward with some sort of plan here, but then also recognizing that perhaps there's some deficiencies in the way this plan was constructed. And, I understand the comments of not wanting to throw good money after bad. There's concerns that, if we spend $9,000 to get this completed, that, long-term, we may end up with a lawsuit on our hands, which is something this board, I think, has an obligation to avoid, right? So I think one thing that may be an option is that we slow down a little bit, we take a look at this document and we see what is consistent, and then we get a real dollar amount of what's gonna be required in order to make this something that works for the Conservancy and for the residents in Fresno and in North County. Because I think it is a great project, it's a great idea, but we don't wanna go out to comment and then ultimately, again, get sued if we accept this document. And I'm not convinced that, $9,000 is gonna get us to a place where we have a usable document that, again, protects this board and protects the state from future liability. So, with that, I'll pass along to Mike. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, that was perfect. I have two questions, but ultimately it's gonna come down to, really, thank you for what you said, because I was gonna agree with everything, let's postpone this. The reason I'm gonna suggest that is, Member Vance makes good points. I can't argue with those points. It makes sense if I was to follow the recommend. If I was to go based solely on that, I would say, yep, it's over. But I also think that maybe we can get to a point where we can find a more realistic number, like the chair mentioned, and perhaps answer some of these questions for our folks in Sacramento to make them more confident, because the last thing we want is a lawsuit or multiple lawsuits, and we're a very litigious society. Question for staff: how much have we spent so far on this entire project of Western Reaches?
The conceptual design, the grant from WCB was just over $1.5 million.
So we spent $1.5 million, which is a lot of money, and we're talking about another potential $10,000. Now, I don't want to deplete the San Joaquin River Conservancy Fund, so one of the reasons why I want to postpone this is I'd like to come back and see if the city of Fresno can pay that money. I think it's possible. The mayor is really committed to this. But there are some legitimate questions we have to answer for our friends in Sacramento, and they're fair questions. So how would you all feel about postponing this and see if we can get to a better point? Okay, then I'll make a motion to postpone this item. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But before we go to a motion, I do want to give the public an opportunity to comment. But before we kick out the public, I just want to make sure any other questions, comments from my colleagues.
Yeah, I would just, Brent, I would just fully endorse though an assessment being made. I understand I think what you have recommended, Chair, is the route to go. I think that we've kept bumping up against this issue, and I think in order for this not to just be kept kicking the can down the road, we're gonna have to get to some resolution. I guess my concern has been is when we have a state agency as a member here that should have been consulted with and is very much participating. I'm not speaking just to the individual, but to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and not early on engaged, but brought into this discussion. That's concerning to me, because the reason we have this Conservancy Board with the state agency representatives is to resolve those things and not to have these come, later on. And that's casting no aspersions on you or whatnot. It was how this was all set up by the previous executive officer at an earlier time. So it's unfortunate, because I do think that there have been commitments that have been made to the public, and we know how important that is when commitments and expectations are raised. But I think it does not remove our fiduciary and responsibility as board members representing the individual agencies, I as a citizen representative and others. I think we have to think long and hard in terms of trying to get this worked out. So I appreciate the recommendations that offered. I think that rather than just kicking it down the road, there has to be some sort of assessment of the document itself.
And before, go ahead and progression.
I just have to say, when I think of Camp Piché, I've been to Camp Piché, there are facilities there. And I think we should be assessing what would it take to get Camp Piché open as our initial approach to this issue. I think all the work that's been done is fantastic. I think it's great to have these 30,000-foot views of what could be done there. But I also see a piece of property that has restroom buildings, picnic shelters, we could get this thing open. And I want to see that assessed And if that's $200,000 or whatever it's gonna cost, I want a target that we can actually hit next year. Let's be realistic and have this good work support that. But I think we can get a win out of Camp Shan, and I think we need to approach it that way.
If I could just add, I serve as the deputy secretary for access, and it's always a priority to find places where we can improve outdoor access for all Californians. So this is still a priority, but I agree with the team that we do truly need to conduct an assessment because we're stewards of taxpayers' funding and we just have to do our due diligence. So I love all the ideas that have been expressed, but I just wanted to make it clear that providing access is still a priority for California. We just have to be creative and strategic in how we move forward with those, projects.
I do want to point out, and just to clarify, that CEQA has the dollar amount of the project has no impact on CEQA. So the adoption of CEQA document, it could be $1 million, it could be $500 million, $bazillion dollars. It doesn't matter from a CEQA perspective, just to make that, so that's clear, like doing an analysis to implement this and we find the cost for business finance, and Mr. Grisham was saying, I agree, but an assessment of what's the minimum needed just to open up Camp Shan, that probably can be done with the exemption, and that's a separate project to itself, as opposed to the adoption of CEQA document and the entire Western Regions Access Plan.
Thank you very much.
Member Morris has her hand raised.
Member Morris?
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could request some advice from the Technical Advisory Committee, if they could review the CEQA document and give us at least their perspective. I mean, I love the idea of me reading it, but honestly, I'm not, a committee might be able to do a better job in addition to us or add some value there.
And our CEQA team would also be willing to help with either PACE or board members and identify certain key areas of the document that you really want to focus on. Because the big document is local.
Yeah, and I would say it's important that this board and the public are involved in that process, but I think ultimately a lot of that technical work is going to be driven by staff and your team. This board very much relies on recommendations from staff, and as well as our state partners. So I very much encourage that process, to work itself out before we need to discuss this again, hopefully in January with some great news. Hopefully from the city. So, with that, I think let's take an opportunity to go out to the public, and receive some comments.
Hi, everybody. Sheila, I came before. I'm speaking today as a member of the public, not as a member of the project team, because our project is done and closed. And that was the original project that I worked with, Sandra Showdown and Fresno Building Healthy Communities, Michael and WRT. So that project is finished still, and this is a new project. I just want to encourage the board today to leave this item with some action item. Something to do that we can all hold on to it, because as board member Foreman mentioned, this is another kicking the can down the road again, if you ask me, because we were here last year with this item, same question. This was presented to the board a year ago. You had 1 year to look at the document, and today only 2 members told us that they have to look at the document. How can we make decisions without doing them? I'm sorry, I'm holding you accountable here. You guys all didn't look at the document, and a year later, now you're saying that we didn't look at the document, we can make a decision, and that's fine. But let's give us a timeline, give us an action item that we can hold you accountable, because you're a public board, right? We're talking about not wasting tax dollars money, $1,500,000 plus, almost $1,600,000 of the public money was spent on this project. Almost 1,100 surveys were collected. Almost 1,000 people from all over the Fresno County and city of Fresno and Madero visited this project. We did an outreach and engagement that no other project can come forward and say they did it. And we collected people's stories. Now we're sitting and are fearful that we can't go to them and we say we cannot make it. Well, what is the argument you're gonna take to them and say, we were so afraid that we didn't even take it to the next step? I have 2 kids and I find myself very often, I tell them, what are you gonna lose if you do that? And I'm gonna ask you, what are you gonna lose if you move forward? You're gonna lose a lot if you don't move forward. The minimum is $1,600,000 of money that was spent. The minimum is like 2 hours of everybody's work, community members' work, youth work, and comments that we received from people who want this place to be open. We're gonna lose that. I totally respect Ms. Vance, comments on like maybe this document is not aligned with the master plan. This project was presented to the board 3 times. All the board members almost were invited to come to walk with us. We had about 20 stakeholder meetings. Fish and Wildlife Conservation staff were invited and they participated in 2 of our meetings. So it's not like we didn't reach out. We had tribes also participating as project partners at one of our public meetings. They had a booth. I don't know if any of you were there. They had a booth, they presented, they talked, they walked the site with us. And we also reached out to the state's official tribe members. Everything is done. So there's nothing here besides that the board didn't look at the document or didn't give us the comment or didn't really pay attention to the design and say, hey, this portion is not making sense. I'm sorry, I have to really turn this back around to you guys that again, kicking this down the road for another year is not gonna save any story here. People are not gonna forget about this. Councilmember Kavazi, they're gonna ask you, well, what is the story? What is the answer? We're gonna go to them and say, we took it to the 11th hours, but then we decided to say no, or we took it to the last line. And this is a transparency. It's very expensive, but let's see what we can do piece by piece going forward. I was in Santa Cruz. I visited,
Sheila, comments are reserved for 3 minutes.
I'm gonna finish it in like 5 seconds.
Thank you.
Henry Powell, Redwood, the State Park, beautiful place, beautiful new infrastructure. In other counties, in other areas, they're doing it because they come together. But in Fresno, we're stopped. Sorry.
Let's wait till after the public comment. We'll come back. Fair.
John Halpin again. I think it makes sense to spend the $10,000 to complete the sequel. I mean, you've already put $1.5 million into it, and if it doesn't expire, at least you have that document. I agree with what Julie is saying, and I can give you a really good example. You have to be careful about how you open properties up to the public. If you don't have staff that you can pay for to be on hand to hold people accountable for the messes that they make. A good example is if you go out to Lost Lake Park on a Monday or even a Tuesday after a 3-day weekend, we have field trips that we've had to divert back to the river center because the park was such a mess. The bathrooms were completely overloaded and there was no place for the kids to use the restroom. So we ended up having to move everything to the river center in order to have our field trips. So we want to make sure that we look at everything. You're talking about not having enough funds to pay for personnel for these facilities that you want to open, but you want to open enough. I can see wanting to open Camp Cheyenne, and if it takes a minimal amount of money to actually do that, we just want to make sure that we have the personnel available to hold the people who come to those parks accountable for their actions, so we don't turn it into a dump like Lost Lake. Thanks.
Good job. Do we have any additional comments from the public? Any online? All right, we're gonna bring it back to the board. Member Carbasi and then.
Yeah, I was referencing some of the public comments. The reason why I made a motion, or I was going to make a motion to table this item, and that's not to make staff mad, It's because based on the feedback and the very valid points from member Vance, I really would predict, based on all the feedback from this public meeting, this item will not survive and it'll die. So I'm happy not to make that motion and you can roll the dice. That's up to the Western Reaches folks.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight that the way this document was prepared is pretty unusual for a state agency. Normally, the state agency is involved in developing the scope of a document. In this case, it was developed by the community and the agency itself was not directly involved. The other thing is that normally for CEQA documents, when a state agency is the lead agency, there's required consultation with the Department of Fish and Wildlife early on. This doesn't mean being invited to public meetings. This is a direct early consultation before the document is drafted. That didn't happen in this case. So we saw this very late when the document was basically in final draft form. This is not normal. This is not how CEQA is typically done. You don't normally have a state agency with the responsibility and obligations under CEQA finding out about sort of the project description after the fact. So this is very unusual, and you can see how it's problematic. And so I sort of take exception with the characterization because I want everyone to understand this is not normal, and this is why it's a problem.
Member Vance, do you have any other comments from the board?
I have one. I agree with, and I was all for it, but when you made your points, Julie, I agree. I don't think that we are postponing this a year. I think, what Councilmember Kavasi is asking is for 90 days, and for 90 days in the best interest, in our best interest, is asking for city funding to move forward with this project. I don't think that's a huge ask.
Member Boston? Sounds like we had a comment online.
Yeah, Member Garcia.
Member Norris?
Yes, thank you very much. I want to apologize to the members who came and participated in this project, and put their time and effort into getting this done and presented to us in front of us. And now I can hear the frustration in their voices because they thought, hey, look, we're putting all this time and effort into this, and we're going to be ultimately successful. But now they're seeing that the roadblocks being put up and the concerns. So I think we need to do a better job. Because I remember the first discussions that we had in bringing this group back in the day, and it's been a while, and we were very enthusiastic because we were finally bringing outside groups into putting this plan together for this project. And now I hear the frustration about a delay, but again, because of the way that we are getting this presentation now. I think that it's best for us to be able to look into the meat and bones of this and then make a decision as to moving forward. But again, I think we need to be able to work hand in hand with any group that's going to come in and participate with the Conservancy, and we need to do a better job. And so those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Any other comments from the board? All right.
Can I offer an alternative? I don't necessarily want to put this into motion, although I'm curious what others think about it. I mean, one other possible way of thinking about this is maybe, obviously finding some funding to do this, but finding a way to really look at what elements of the project are consistent with the master plan and which ones are potentially in conflict, and coming back to the board and us sort of really going through each element of the project description and thinking about what we really want to try and move forward in a CEQA document and what we don't. I get the sort of perspective of, why not put it out for public review? And if we don't build all of those things, then no harm, no foul. The problem is when you put something out for public review, our state agency is saying, this is what we want to have done. And when you are doing that in a way that conflicts with our other plans, that can trigger a mandatory CEQA finding, or we're not doing CEQA right. And so we need to be able to stand behind what we put out there as a proposed project and make sure it's not inconsistent with important guidelines. So that's kind of the issue. I mean, I get the whole, why not throw it out there and then we can build what we want when we have money, if we have money, and it kind of locks it in. I get that perspective, but there's sort of the other perspective.
And just building off that comment, I think you can picture two pathways forward, one in which we go out to get comments. And we have a pretty good idea, you know, what some of those comments are gonna be, at which point, you know, this board's likely gonna have to take action to revise that document anyways. And so what we're really talking about here is not delaying the process, but rather than spending that 30 days through a comment period, actually just going in and identifying those things that need to be adjusted at this point in time. And so what I really hope is that when we come back in January, we have a really good idea of what that will cost. And we also have a really good idea of how we might pay for that. And that would be my hope when we come back in January. So with that, I would kick it back to the board. I don't know if anybody's interested in making a motion, or if we're just gonna allow this to that.
I would make a motion to table this till the next morning in January.
Is that provide any direction to staff on the interactions with P&P and?
I would think that we need to have interactions, with PMP, and I think we should rely on our state agencies. And with, Councilmember Pravasi being, accessing, PMP could access funds through the city of Fresno.
Okay. Motion, we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. We got a motion and a second.
Can I make one more point real quick? I just want to highlight that, me and my staff are perfectly willing to help in any future analysis, with respect to CEQA and Fish and Wildlife impact. So I just want to throw that out there. Whatever the ultimate decision is, with a revision or whatever. So I just want to say that. I'm happy to do that through staff or directly with Rose and Richard.
Thank you, Member Olson. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Ms. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Harbasi?
Yes.
Ms. Lucchesi?
Yes.
Ms. Norris?
Yes.
Ms. Sandoval?
Yes.
Ms. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Forehand?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Excuse me, do I get a vote?
No,
Always in my book.
Since you didn't give us your location to be on the agenda, you are able to participate in discussion but not vote.
Thank you. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Apologies, Member Garcia. With that, we're gonna move on to item F4.
Okay, this item is the River West project presentation and proposal for compliance with the settlement agreement. And the recommendation is to receive the presentation from the city of Fresno and discuss the presentation and provide direction to staff on how to proceed. There's a long background. I will give the summary. The city of Fresno has prepared the presentation and supporting documentation on River West project design. You have that in front of you in your board packet. It also includes the estimated construction costs and timeline for design and completion, and construction. The presentation and supporting documentation is now part of your packet. The River West project is entering the 60% design phase, and the revised construction cost estimate is currently $24 million and some change, plus additional contingency and fees to be determined. The revised construction cost estimate for the core project is currently 10 million and some change, plus additional contingency and fees to be determined. These estimated costs are anticipated to continually increase over time. The Conservancy Governing Board previously authorized $9.3 million for the construction of the River West project. However, due to the Conservancy's limited funds and the rising cost of materials and construction costs, the Conservancy is unable to construct and open the core project, alternative 5B and alternative 1 concurrently. The settlement agreement provides that if the Conservancy cannot open alternative 5B and alternative 1 concurrently with the core project, that the Conservancy would be able to, would open the core project first and thereafter open alternative 5B and 1 concurrently. We have a presentation from city staff.
And good morning. Thank you guys so much for having us here today. My name is Melissa McLeod. I'm the projects administrator with the city of Fresno and the capital projects department. I'm here today. I know it's been some time since we all got to meet together, but I'm happy to come to the board today and let you know what progress we've made and where we're going moving forward. Next one. As of today, I know Carrie summarized a lot of that very nicely, but we have received our approval for the geometric approval drawing, which is the 30% or this initial schematic drawing. And then we've also provided our consultant, Ferguson Pritchard, their notice to proceed to move forward with the design documents, or what I think is more commonly known as the 60%. Moving forward with the 60% would allow us to start to prepare actual construction or design drawings for the project. This would be for the entirety of the project right now. Some of the items that Ferguson Pritchard has been working towards that would allow us to move forward with permitting, and then the HHRP draft document with the 60% would be, they've done a lot of the utility research, they've done their biological studies, geotechnical studies, a lot of the studies that you see there, so that would allow us to start applying for the permitting during this next phase of the project. And then also, we've also continually been working with the Conservancy to identify additional construction funding, as we know that right now the construction funding for the project is limited. And I'm gonna apologize to, can you actually just get forward 2 slides before I go to the exhibit? Just so I can give you kind of a brief look ahead at what the plan is for the project. We did provide Ferguson Pritchard their notice to proceed this month. So with that, we are looking to have the next phase of the project for the plan set developed by the end of December, which would, we have the final trail alignment. We are going to start picking out, based on funding, obviously availability, but the different amenities of each site, the restrooms or the aesthetic facilities that we want to see at each trailhead. We'll be doing the permit applications for any environmental items that we need, then also preparing the draft HRP for the project. After this next phase, the part 2, the design development, would be hopeful to move into the construction document phase, where we'd actually be obtaining the permits needed for construction, finalizing that HRP, and then any other items to move forward with construction. As I mentioned, we are still looking forward to identifying funding for the entirety of the project, that 24 million. I know right now we have limited funding that is approximately that $9 to $10 billion range. And so, as Karen mentioned, we are looking to provide, or to get the board approval to move forward with the settlement agreement, which would be the core project, which would be the trail, and then the Woodward West or the Perrin Avenue access. And then if you can go back to the previous slide, what we did to kind of assess moving forward with the core project specifically, and then I don't know if you choice one, but I feel very obvious. We worked with Ferguson Pritchard to look at each of the areas of the project. We had the 3 trailheads, the bus turnaround, and then the trail itself. And we looked at the civil improvement costs, which would be any of the HMA, the striping, if there's import, excavation, just the general civil improvements, what the cost would be for those items. Also looking at the site furnishings that were proposed initially in the scope of work, whether it would be, like I said, the restrooms, benches, picnic tables, what cost would be projected at that specific area. And then lastly, the planting and irrigation in that area, where some of that could possibly be covered by the HRRP funding, but right now we're just looking at the whole of what that would be in the specific areas. Took those costs for each of the areas, got the total, and then looked at adding an additional 18% construction, or construction management cost or anyone that going out to construction, arriving at a general cost for each location. As we said, these are just proposed now, and as the project continues to go on, these could increase based on availability of materials. But looking at that as a whole, that's what you see in front of you, and then looked at the amount of funding that we had available and decided that the core project would be best to move forward with right now. That will open it up to.
Perfect. Thank you for your presentation. Members of the board, we have some questions. I know looking at this map, and kind of orient myself a little bit, so. Okay. Any questions, or if you want to go into comments?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us, and it's exciting to see on your timelines an element of 2025 for at least the word construction, so that's super exciting. You know, it's unfortunate that the project cost is what it is, but we all understand how it works, that deal with big capital projects. I do wholly support moving forward with the core project. I think getting this started is super important while we have funds to do so, and I think it will help build some momentum to get some additional funding for the other two access points. I do see that we have a letter from the San Joaquin River Access Corporation asking to build only 5B. I don't support reopening our settlement agreement. I don't want to go back to the conversation of alternative 1 versus 5B. I don't think any of us want to relive that. I fully support going forward with the core, and then with the commitment, obviously, from all of us to pursue funding to open those other two access points when subsequent funding is available.
Thank you, Member Vance. Any other questions or comments from the board? Anybody online? Seeing none, we're going to go off the public.
Barry Bauer, San Joaquin River Access Corporation. I want to address the picture and what the core project is. So I understand this element over here is the parking lot parent. But this item is alternative 1. That alternative is alternative 5B. And this is a parking lot for buses. So all three of these things at this end are not included in the core project. Only this parking lot and only, and then the trail system in red. I believe we're required to have the green trail down here. That's part of the core project. So the people from the from the Stanhope Park can get down the cliff to the river, to the recreation area. So, am I on the right page here? Yes.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Okay, so everybody understands what you're getting. You're not getting that box, or those boxes, except the green line and this parking line. Now, in my opinion, our corporation's opinion, having a parking lot down here at this end is trivial in the overall scheme of things, and some of that money would be better saved to provide better access to the people of Fresno. With that, wish you guys make your decision.
Great. Do you have any other members from the public to make a comment?
Richard Sloan, President, Canoe and Kayak Club. It's been my observation that Heron Avenue is a dump site. There's a lot of vandalism that occurs down there. The cost of maintenance of that parking lot is going to be incredible. There are lots of hazmat up there. That's my feedback for that.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments from the public?
Sharon Weaver, San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust. I just want to say that I'm excited that we're actually talking about moving forward with the project. And even though this isn't perfect, we would like to see the whole thing. I think moving forward with something is better than moving forward with nothing. Thank you.
It's great. All right, unless we have any other comments from the public, we'll bring it back to the board.
All right, again. In response to the parent dumping, I'm hoping that, there is a phenomenon that happens when you have something open to the public and when you have a lot of public presence. Hopefully that sort of thing will be reduced because there will be lots of eyes on interest and ownership. So I think that will be helpful on that front. And in respect to the 5B alternative, again, I don't want to revisit the very traumatic conversations we had about alternative 1 versus 5B. And you'll notice that the 5B alternative is more than twice what the other access points are. And the reason for that is there's a very steep bluff there and a need for extensive retaining walls. So that's not something we're going to be able to, that doesn't pencil out, even if we put all of that aside in the settlement agreement, the money's not going to work in terms of, giving up one for the other. So I still, again, fully support moving forward with the core project, understanding that it will still benefit the community of Fresno, but not to the extent that the full project build out will do, but we will get there. I'm convinced eventually.
Thank you, Member. Do we have any other comments?
I just want to make the point that we have been making this point for the last few years. This project is the highest priority for this board. I just want to continue to state that, even though we're only looking at the issue of the core project at this point, this project, its entirety, is a high priority for this board, and we will not take our eye off the ball in terms of trying to make, in terms of seeking the funding necessary to make this happen.
And I just want to build on those comments, and before I do, I want to thank the trust and I want to thank staff. We're organizing the 30-30 event a few weeks ago, in which Secretary Crowfoot came and participated in that event. But beforehand, we had an opportunity to speak with him about priorities for this board, and really Red was on the top along with Camp Deshan. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that we're continuing to have those conversations with the state, because we do recognize there are some gaps here as far as funding. But we're confident we can close those gaps with strong partnerships with the state. So, Member Karbasi.
No, thank you, Chair. So, first of all, we've been working on this for a very, very long time, and this is another great moment. I mean, opening Wildwood, and now we're really getting to a point where we're gonna have shovels in the ground. I want to first and foremost thank city staff, Melissa, Randall, your director. You guys have done a fantastic job along with Public Works. We've talked about this, had countless meetings on this project, and you are doing an excellent job, and I'm so confident, like with Veterans Boulevard, you're gonna manage this project on time, on budget. And that's hard to do, but you have a great track record. Now, I also want to thank the Access Corporation. You have been extremely patient. You have been on it to make sure we are committed to the settlement agreement now. And you've also said, in light of the budget constraints, we realize things are ballooning. We're willing to possibly amend that to make it easier to provide the highest public access. That's the gist of what I got from our conversations. But it has always been in good faith, and I'm very grateful for your extreme patience on this. And you've been great partners. And I don't think those conversations are necessarily over. I think the fear is, with costs ballooning, if we just do the core project, the concern will be, then we've done enough to where we won't get more funding to do more. But I will say this, and I'm gonna give credit to Chairman Colley. When Wade Crowfoot, our secretary, was here, and he asked, what are the top 5 things? He said, River West. And this is someone who, now he mentioned projects in both Madera and Fresno, but this is someone who is an amazing supervisor in Madera County, but said, look, I'm the chair of this board, this is the priority of the board. So I think they understand that we need more money for River West, and we're not done yet. I also think, given that the buses are going to be going through 5B, I don't want to open up that conversation either, I get it. I don't want, you're 100% on that. Right on that. That is probably the highest public use, especially for school kids coming down. But I will say this, and this is going to be a credit to Scott Mosier, our Public Works Director. there's a little green on the far, left, and thank you, Barry, pointed out.
Okay, that's what I wanted to comment on.
Right,
Right there.
so,
It is Scott's baby.
all right, that's right, we'll call it Mosher Lane. Anyways, there will be there's still that little cul-de-sac, there's parking there. So even though it's not gonna be as convenient for, let's say, having a kayak, you can still park in that cul-de-sac and then walk down and access the rest of the core, which includes the trail. So there will be some parking up there.
Let me interject. It turns out that the core project includes access from this parking lot.
Yes.
Down to the project.
Yep.
And Scott came up with the green line solution. And we support it, and let's do it.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure you guys were thinking about that relative, you guys are thinking about that relative to the core project. Because by definition, it is part of the core.
Yep, and thank you for your help on that. That is part of the core, and that'll be part of the build out. We'll include that access as well. So, and I want to thank staff, you guys have been great. Carrie, you came in and all this craziness. I mean, there's like a hurricane right here in Fresno, and you've done a really good job working after Karen and keeping things moving to where we're actually going to break ground. This is a big deal. And I want to thank our partners, not only locally, but in Madera and Sacramento. We couldn't have done without you. So I'm a very happy councilman.
So happy council member, want to make a motion?
Well,
It sounds like we got some.
Yeah.
I'm not so happy.
Oh,
I just want to say it's a bit of a splash of cold water that we're going to not see the whole project at this time. And it causes me, queasiness, to put lightly, that the forever deferred aspects of this, hearing Sharon come up and make her comments is meaningful to me. And knowing that I think there's a timestamp on some of this, and that we can leverage the opening of this to fulfill the rest of the funding. So with Brandon as well, we need to move forward with the whole project. And Camp Duchesne is also really important. And we did communicate with the secretary on some of these priorities. We must deliver. So I'm not happy because I feel like we're going short here, but we are gonna make progress. So I've been convinced. I was walking in here when I heard this, I was like, I'm gonna be voting no on this. I am now willing to keep moving forward, but we must fulfill the entire settlement agreement. We must hold our word on that compromise, and we should be focused on fundraising to finish it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
yeah, remember, that carries a lot of weight with me. I know how passionate you are about this project in its entirety. So when you say that, this doesn't fall on deaf ears. And I think we need to be very clear, just because we're starting with this, we are committed to the whole thing. And I can be really annoying and tenacious when I want to be, so I will be going second, I'm trying to bring dollars in here. So thank you for that reminder. That's important. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve staff's recommendation and continue with the core project in its entirety.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. McCollum,
Yes.
Ms. Austin,
Yes.
Mr. Carmasi,
Yes.
Ms. Lucchesi,
Yeah.
Ms. Norris,
Yes.
Ms. Sandoval,
Yes.
Ms. Vance,
Yeah.
Mr. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Corrigan,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell,
Yes.
Mr. Travis,
Yes.
the ayes have it.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to our last regular second item F5.
So item F5 is to amend and extend the operating agreement with the San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust for Sycamore Island and Van Buren unit of the San Joaquin River Parkway. Recommendation from staff is that the board authorize the executive officer to amend and extend the operation agreement with the San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust for the Sycamore Island and Van Buren unit of the San Joaquin River Parkway. Again, this is a long summary, but I think I'm going to go through this one. The San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust currently operates and maintains the Conservancy-owned Sycamore Island and Van Buren unit properties by way of an operations agreement, which is included in attachment 1. The proposed amendment will include year-round public access and additional funding, the addition of a grading assessment and funding redistribution, which is part of what we talked about at our last board meeting, and to extend the operations and maintenance agreement to June 2027. So for year-round public access, the agreement identifies that the properties be closed during the winter months. The trust has indicated that they are willing to operate and maintain the site on a year-round basis for an additional $45,000 per year, and that's included as an attachment to that quote. Staff has determined that there is adequate funding to support the additional cost of operation and that the benefit to the public outweighs those costs. For the grading assessment, in August 2024, the Conservancy Governing Board asked for additional information on the proposed road stabilizer by way of a grading plan or assessment. Staff were directed to redistribute existing contract funds to accomplish this task. And the proposed amendment will include the addition of a grading plan or assessment and will redistribute those funds as necessary. And then the term extension, due to the delay in executing the operating agreement, the trust has requested that the term be extended, and staff has determined that the operations agreement can be extended to June 2027. We've also determined that there is adequate funding to support the extension of the operations agreement, and the benefit to the public, again, outweighs the cost. So prior to executing the amendment, staff and the trust will be working together to complete the following items. There is a 2024-25 annual operations plan that needs to be submitted for Conservancy's review and written approval. And the annual operations plan shall also include a development of written property management plan and vegetation management plan. And item number 2, to provide an updated timeline for outstanding property management and maintenance projects and quotes as necessary. And there's a brief table on items that we're currently working on the trust with. Item 3, complete the requested installation of left warning signs on the left Afghan hearing unit. 4, complete requested installation of freestanding sign holders with signs stating that traffic was on no vehicles beyond this point at bluff erosion sites near Trout Pond. 5, utilize up to $15,000 of grading line item, the line item in the contract that was for $245,000 for a short-term solution to the degraded roads that includes leveling and filling holes to improve the visitor's experience until the longer-term solution is approved by the board. And 6, plan to coordinate additional site signage with the Conservancy during winter of 2024.
Excellent. All right, do you have any questions on the presentation, contract report? Be online. Hearing none, we're going to public comment. Ready from the public, just make comment. Doesn't look like it, so we're going to bring it back to the board. Board action.
I'd like to make a motion that we support the staff recommendation to authorize the executive officer to amend and extend the operating agreement for Sycamore Island and Van Buren.
Second. Excellent. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Carmasi?
Yes.
Ms. Lucchesi?
Yes.
Ms. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Sandoval?
Yes.
Ms. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Meeting's happening.
Thank you. I do apologize. I have to be up there till 12 o'clock. I'm going to ask that Member Austin take us through our administrative and committee reports, as well as our closed session items. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And okay, we will start with item G1, organization reports.
President of the Kayak Club, I'd just like to say that the club is finally clicking. We've got a lot of members and a lot of things, and I've given you a list of kind of what we've done over the last couple of months. Your staff has been very cooperative, and we really appreciate the hard work that they do. And anytime you want to get out on the river, let us know. We've got an excuse, we can get you out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sharon Weaver with the San Joaquin River Parkway Trust. I just want to mention, I may have mentioned this at the previous meeting, but we are supporting the Yes on Prop 4 campaign. That's the climate bond. It includes an $11 million allocation for the San Joaquin River Conservancy. So in light of all the discussions this morning about the Conservancy needing more funding, we are doing our best to create that new funding that the Conservancy needs. So vote yes on Prop 4. And there is going to be a press conference that will be helping facilitate either on October 15th or 16th. We're still ironing out the details, but we'll certainly send that to all of you and encourage you to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, all right. We will move on to the Deputy Attorney General's report. We have, sorry, I have to get her access. Okay. Ms. Booth, do you have any report?
Good morning or good afternoon. No, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Executive Officer report.
Okay, so we've had a busy 2 months. Rebecca and I went to our Health Conservancies meeting just last month, and there's a meeting where we get to meet with the other state conservancies, and there's just 10 in California. So we got to talk about how we operate. It was my first time meeting everyone and being there. Obviously, I'm new, but it's Rebecca's first time also going. So we got to talk about how we operate, what we do, partners, JPAs. And it was really informative, and it really allowed us to make some great connections. And we've been working and talking with the other conservancies about their budget constraints and how they're working to fix their issues. And we're all in the same position in that all the conservancies feel that they're underfunded. And so, and Gloria was there too, because she got to hear all the conversation. So we are working collectively on a plan to band together and to ask for additional funding and to be strategic about that. One of the other constraints or issues that we talked about was the new EO on unhomed on state property or unhomed encampments on state properties. And the Conservancy, we're just a staff of currently of 5, but we have availability for 6. It's really, and there's a lot of activity out on the river. It's a cool place to be. It's, shady, and it's kind of out of the way. And so we're working on a plan with CHP, a contract with CHP to have additional patrols out there to help alleviate that and meet the intent of the EO. And we're working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Caltrans to see what their policies are so that we can create our own conservancy policy as we're required to do. And then again, with our other conservancies that are experiencing that same, those same issues. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we're working on some things. We have a very packed agenda for January, so, but we'll move some things around so that we're not here all day.
Bring in lunch.
I know. Well, thank you to Rebecca for bringing donuts. Please grab one so we don't eat them all. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we've had several volunteer groups come out and have volunteer days on conservancy properties. And then we've also had a couple of our own. We are going to continue to let the board know when those opportunities are available for the public, and they are posted on our website on their partners page under our event calendar. So I just wanted to make you guys all aware of that. I wanted to give an update on Ball Ranch with previously, I think at the June or July board meeting, we had asked for the approval from the board to allow the executive officer to open Ball Ranch, and we are still not quite there, but we are working hand in hand with the trust to get that open, and it's imminent. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we can do a press release, news release, ribbon cutting, all things. We're very excited, and it is in the very, very near future.
Like October?
Probably. There's a couple things that we're working through, but yeah, it's probably October. And I think that the trust is working on getting their staff together and in place right now, and they're targeting October 15th.
And I would encourage a ribbon cutting. Yeah, it needs to be celebrated, and we need to let the community know.
Yes. Okay. And then for staffing, so like I said earlier, we're currently a staff of 5. We do have a vacant open position to fill for a park maintenance worker 1. And the reason why it's open is because we recently promoted the person into our park maintenance worker 2 position. And so we just wanted to acknowledge Robert House, our park maintenance worker 2. And we're going to be backfilling his 1 position, and that he's part of the project and property management unit, which Cheryl is the supervisor for. And so we just wanted to, we're trying to backfill, we're trying to grow and trying to service our properties with our limited funds. But we are, like I said, working on a permanent solution for that. And then also, we are working on with CNRA and the government, the GovOps unit to fill the open board position. So we currently have the tribal and youth representative positions that are open. We need to have a nonprofit or local government sponsors for those positions and people to apply. So there's a process, and we have the application and the link, and we're going to be working through our PACE group and just word of mouth and on our website to get those positions filled so we can meet our quorum every board meeting. So,
2 years ago, we did a very, very big push for that. Are those people no longer eligible? Because I understood they applied. They were, yeah. So I guess I thought we had gone through this exercise 2 years ago, almost to the day, and we had multiple applicants that I understood were there, but I guess those were just starting over.
My understanding from my conversation with the GovOps unit is that the applicants were screened out for a number of reasons. And I remember them saying that one of the reasons was the people that had applied were not able to attend board meetings. Okay. I think that's everything.
All right, thank you. And next we have item G4, board member reports and comments. Yes.
I'd like to first of all start off by saying thank you to staff, Sharon, Superior Lands Trust, as our partner organizations with CNRA to host the 30x30 meeting at the River Center. It's really important. That meeting had gotten postponed twice, and I'm really happy that the secretary pushed us at the end because he was already going to be in town. That was a truncated program, on a very hot day. It was a very short notice as well, and it was Carrie had jury duty that day. So I have to say that one of my ultimate goals was to lift up the Conservancy and his director, and that didn't happen. But in person, but I did want to give a shout out there for the work that happened to make that, and it was a really classy and wonderful event. Tomorrow is state's 30x30 conference. When the secretary was here and some of the deputy secretaries I've asked, and Kathleen's on target to achieve 30x30. This will be national and international significance. We have 5 years. I've always sensed that the Central Valley and the San Joaquin Valley in particular will have a key role in that. That's still to be seen. I've been reappointed to the Partnership Coordinating Committee, and I hope that we can do even in the next year a series of events, one of which maybe we'll have through the Conservancy. And kind of aligned with that, but down in the weeds, I went to the PACE meeting. It's really important. Staff, again, congratulations. It's not easy, and yet to be public facing. And it's a much less formal meeting than this one, which enables the community to give their feedback more fully. And that can be difficult sometimes, but it's so important. I'm going to try to be there more. I know that Member McCauley has been there in the past. Just really, and then finally, maybe just to say to the board and the staff, we have 2 new members coming on, a tribal representative and youth representative. We need to do that. And then I hope we can start a strategic planning process that we've discussed. And that during the interview process, we mentioned that to Carrie. it's a moment when there's a lot of changes happening in the valley. This river is the key, one of the key pieces of that. And the role that the Conservancy Estate Agency will have in leading that is really, really important. So I feel like it's always I'm wanting more. We have to wait until we have a full board and those people get oriented for a few months. But I'm really hoping that we can begin visioning. If we don't name where we're going, we're not going to arrive there early. So we need to set some high bars that with Camp Shane, we see the community is way out in front of us envisioning things, and we shouldn't let money be a barrier to that visioning and for us going for it. Just a lot of kudos to staff.
Any other? Yes.
Yes, there's been a lot of Northwest Fresno related items today, so I apologize. I've spoken a lot, so board members, especially those online, thank you for your patience. And one last thing I wanted to mention, and Carrie, maybe you want to talk about it too, to really give special recognition to city staff and to conservancy staff in this board. As part of the settlement agreement, the traffic signal at Audubon and Delmar has been activated, and it's been working for 6 weeks. And if you've driven through there, it's made it, the neighbors have reached out, and thank you, Barry, giving me a thumbs up. The neighborhood has really responded well to it, it's helped to slow things down, and it's made a big difference in how people safely cross the street as they want to access the river, which is a big deal. So,
Yes, the traffic signal is included as part of information item E3, and there's the press release or the news release that we included as an attachment. I think that's what Ashley is currently working on bringing up. But yes, we've had a press conference out there with city staff, the mayor, and the conservancy, and then Councilmember Karafi. And it was a great event, and there was lots of, it was so fun. Rebecca pressed the little button and it started working, and it was great. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of checking things off the list, and pressing buttons is another one. So, it was a good time, and we're hoping to do that more and more often with opening properties and celebrating our successes.
that's kind of the point. These things aren't just, oh, let's do it. There's a lot of boxes to check, and you guys have been consistently doing that. It's surprising how hard it is to get a traffic signal activated.
It was just a press button.
It sounds like a small item and not something that the Conservancy would normally be involved in, but it was a, required mitigation measure in the EIR for, that covered River West, and was a major point of contention in the discussions about moving forward with that project. So it sounds sort of, minor, but it was a super important milestone to be able to move forward with the River West project. So exciting.
Any other comments? All right, well, with that, we will move forward to item H, our closed session, H1, Government Code Section 11126, Public Employee Evaluation.
Gonna go to the big conference room, I think.
Yeah, one down the hall. Okay. Within the building.
Bless you.
I don't know.
And we're live.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm in work mode. All right, we're reporting the no reportable action items. Okay, and with that,
Oh, we have then, agenda item I.
yes.
And if I can, we need a quorum of board members for the next case meeting, because that will be the public hearing for the
I
regulation.
believe I have it on my calendar.
Okay.
Wait, what?
So
December 5th or whatever.
December 4th.
December 4th.
Yes. So wait a minute, so I'm confused about this because there's not supposed to be any decisions made at the PACE meeting? What do you mean by that?
It's the PACE meeting and a public hearing. We're doing it at this
Oh,
time.
It's from 1 to 5.
I see.
Is that for the regulations or what is it, the?
No.
Hearings, yeah.
The hearing is for the regulation.
Regulations.
And so that's combined with the PACE meeting?
Yeah, we would not have a board meeting that day. We would just have the PACE meeting from
I
1
just
to
have
5.
a calendar invite for.
Okay, we'll be deleting that. Yeah, I will delete the ones that were preset just to save the dates for you guys. It was kind of the meetings are deleted at the same.
Thank you.
I should be able to.
Make time.
10 a.m. I think I saw the days.
It's from 1 to
1
5.
to 5.
1 to 5.
Just 1 to 5. I think we talk about the tour next week.
Yes, we have a parkway tour.
When, where,
Huh?
when and where should we meet?
We're gonna meet at Lane's. I'll send out an itinerary, probably on Friday, tomorrow.
Back on the PACE meeting, I could be in attendance.
Thank you. Always in Sacramento. What? On the 8th.
Carrie, is there anything I can postpone in January meeting for you? Anything else that?
There's so many things. We already had a full agenda for January.
I just added more stuff to it, so thank you.
And then we will move on to the next board meeting, January 15th. I will be accepting gifts because that's my birthday. Adjourn, and then we will adjourn.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I'll go now.
The January 15th one starts at 10?
Yeah, 9 board meeting.
It will probably be 9.
I'm glad you sent out the reminder. I would have figured.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See?
When I.
See, they made fun of me.
Get the card right now.
Say 9
Yeah,
a.m.
see you.
That's
See you. Thank you.
It said 9 on the agenda.
That's how I found out.
I just didn't look because it's usually.
Agendas. I mean, come on.
No, I don't.
I think it was 6. Sorry.
We have 6 that said yes.
Embodied it too. Is it included?
Yeah, yes, yes, 6.
And then,
Okay, then I will go.
Yeah, right. No one else is.
I didn't want to buy any. I've been to most of them and that.
No, you're gonna leave. No.
Sorry, Regina. What was that?
35 is a good number.
Yeah, plus 20.
What is it? What is it? What is it? Like, you know what I'm saying? He said it's like,